Hey, Guy here. Welcome to my podcast. And today, my beautiful guest is Heather Ivany. And we dive into the topic of the Akashic Records. And I've never chatted about this on the podcast before. And it can all sound very mysterious and exotic. And what is it, And I wanted to get clear on that today because there's a lot of different terminology, even thinking about the quantum field and spirituality and how all this lines up. So Heather does a beautiful job of demystifying all that today. And just as importantly as well, we dive into Heather's own journey, and she really opens up and shares from a beautiful heart-centered place about her struggles and why she lent in to the Akashic Records, and now why she teaches this so passionately as well. It's a fantastic conversation. And if you get a lot out of it, and if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment below, or iTunes, Spotify, hit the subscribe, 5 stars, share it with a loved one or friend. Help me to continue to get these out there. I'm very excited as I record this because I'm literally going to be on a plane to Europe to run our Portugal retreat next month. Which is a couple of spots left if you want to join us. Yes, July 2023. We're going to be in Portugal for 5 nights near the Algarve. Anyway, if you're new to our work or just discovering this, there's links below as well. You can dive into our free meditations. It's all there. And hopefully I get to meet you in person one day soon. Enjoy this conversation with Heather. And we're recording, we're live. Heather, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. What honor to be here, Guy.
I know nothing about some of the topics we're going to be talking about today, so I'm a complete novice, which always excites me, and why I was happy to get you on the show and have these conversations. I love coming at it from a beginner's mind, so sometimes the less I know, the better, because I don't want to impose anything on the wisdom that you're going to share today. The question I do ask everyone is that if you were, say, on an aeroplane and sat next to a complete stranger right now, and they asked you what you did for a living, what would you say?
I support people with aligning and ascending with their purpose.
Beautiful. Do you find that that is a major struggle for people in your journey?
I find both. I find the people that journey into my field are people that are wandering and trying to figure out what their purpose is. They're X years old and they're trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. And then I also bring in a lot of teachers, so a lot of energetic teachers that want to expand and grow into the next platform of their service that they have to others. So I kind of get a kick out of working with both, and they usually can both end up in the same container in a training oftentimes.
Yeah.
And to be able to ride the wave of the person who's totally a beginner and someone who's just like extending a branch on their own tree. I think it's such a cool arena to be in simultaneously. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. How would you define purpose? Because I think it's something we all get hung up on. I
Yeah.
certainly have in my life as well. And what is purpose? Oh my God, I don't know my purpose. And quite often we chase the purpose and we miss the moments
Yeah.
in our life at the same time. Because obviously I have a business and I run a company as well. And I have a 2.5-year-old daughter. And since becoming a dad, a lot of my priorities have shifted very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But I find like one of my greatest purposes is actually being a husband and a dad, and not just this career driven must achieve and go out there. And I find it fascinating what purpose actually means.
Well, to start, I just want to lay it out there that everyone does get to have their own interpretation of that. And I don't think
Yeah.
there is one sort of Webster's dictionary, Wikipedia define of the word purpose. And to expand on that, I think that we get locked into purpose being locked in. So it's energy, it's frequency, which means it's dynamic and malleable, and it's moving. So I had someone once interview me, and they wanted to know the journey of how I arrived to where I got to. And then when I sort of completed what I was sharing, She said, so now do you feel like you're living on purpose and you're offering your purpose out to the world? And I paused and I was like, well, no, I felt like I've been doing that all along the way. It's just as I grow and expand, my purpose grows and expands with me. And I think that this is a piece that a lot of people forget, or that they just don't consider. And you just explained it very beautifully. You're on a trajectory of A, and then you become a husband and a father, and all of a sudden your priorities change and your purpose becomes different than what you thought it was before you became that father and that husband. And so if we're not willing to allow the frequency and the energy of our purpose to be malleable, this is where I feel a lot of people can kind of get stuck, because they're like, I thought it was this, but now it feels like that, and I can't make up my mind, and I'm really feeling like I'm scattered and lost. And it's like, it's like you're growing and expanding, and your purpose is moving with you. And then the second piece to that is when I'm working with someone to sort of unearth and pull that out from within, like what is their purpose? The way that I most commonly access that with people is by systematically going through what I call an energetic body scan. I'm in the field of the Akasha. But what I'm doing is I'm going through the clair abilities, which are connected to the senses in the body. So clairsentient is someone who feels things emotionally. They're very empathetic. Clairvoyant is the one that most people are familiar with, which is the ability to see things. And we oftentimes think of this as being able to see auras or future projections of things, but it can literally be the person that walks into a room and they take in far more detail than the person standing next to them. And that's a form of clairvoyant. Like they can see a lot. And then there's claircognizance, which is the inner knowing. A lot of people call this intuitive hits, right? You're standing there and all of a sudden you get this great idea or a great download. That's claircognizance. So when I'm working with someone to support them with identifying what their purpose is, the first thing I do is I'm like, let's figure out where your clairs are strongest, because this is how you can connect to consciousness with the most ease. And once we know what our clair ability is, then your purpose is linked to it directly. For someone who's clairsentient, they're probably going to work with people. They're probably going to work with animals. They're going to work with plants. They're people that feel things around them. So that's the capacity that they work in. Now, someone who's more claircognizant, usually that goes hand in hand with a strong intelligence. So they're going to be more tech-based. They're going to be more knowledge-based and a hunter for wisdom and information. So there's ways that you can play with it.
Yeah, I love it. Do you find people are fearful or have beliefs about actually leaning in and following their purpose? One piece of advice I was given many years ago when I was sharing off air that I had to sell my company and move into a completely new direction, a lot of stuff started to come up, even though those aspects that you speak about, I'd been developing that relationship with, I guess, my intuitive self that I trusted. But then when I wanted to move forward, my whole body would start screaming out,
Yeah.
"This is what you're doing, right?"
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the part that I refer to as there's two parts of ourselves. There's the part of ourselves that is our being, and the part of ourselves that is our becoming. So the part of us that wants to grow and expand and do something that's kind of outside of the box, this is usually connected to our higher self, right? The part of us that is following the intelligence and the wisdom from something that has a bigger perspective than our limited point of view that we have here in our 3D human form. But then there's a part of us that is also our being, and it's highly connected to ego and subconscious mind. And the ego, when in health, it gets such a bad rap, but the ego, when in health, it's designed to protect. And so it makes sure that we eat when we need to eat and sleep when we need to sleep and exercise. And it takes care of this human form so that the soul that exists within us has a vehicle to carry it around during the day. So when you're feeling that calling to step into something that is new, it's part of the field of the unknown. And the being part of ourself doesn't want to go into the unknown because it can't guarantee our protection because it doesn't know what's coming. So that shit kicking storm that comes up that doesn't want you to do the thing, oftentimes people assume that when we take big risks and we do new things, that we do it without fear. And the reality is the fear and the higher calling are existing simultaneously. They don't go along. And we're faced with this choice of, what do you want to choose in this moment? Do you want to choose the part of you that wants to stay safe? Or do you want to choose the part of you that wants to grow and expand? And every choice is valid.
Yeah. Wow. Everything you said just resonates perfectly. The being and the becoming. I love it. I've not heard it broken down like that before. What about on your journey? Because clearly there's with the work, the way you describe it, we're leaning into this spirituality aspect of things. And for me, once I nurtured that relationship and had a deeper embodied experiences, it allowed me to lean into the becoming more and let go of the fear more. Be aware of it, but keep moving forward. And I think without those some of those spiritual experiences that I had initially on my journey, it would have been much more challenging. So it was almost like I had to be ripe to then finally move forward, Otherwise, like the old self growing up in Wales would have not dismissed this, but wasn't even aware of many of these aspects. So I guess there's a question in there somewhere, but I'm also fascinated then on your own personal journey. Have you always had a spiritual backbone to the way you've approached life, or did that kind of develop over time?
It's been a little bit outside of the box. Like I grew up in a place that was very, um, I don't know, white picket fences, two cars, like the little like picturesque kind of environment. It's a suburbia place that I grew up in. And so I saw a lifestyle that never really fit me. I always wanted to be in nature. I wanted to escape on the weekends and go hiking and snowboarding and mountain biking. And where I was living was kind of a place that was very metro, very, wanting to shop and work the 9 to 5. So in that sense, I've been outside of the box. And in the form of spirituality, I grew up in a religious home of Catholicism and Catholic upbringing. But even then, I could see the parts of it that weren't a good fit for me. I enjoyed the connection to God or higher self, but I didn't like the way that it played out on the human level of sitting in an experience that for me at the time was very boring. The connection between myself and the person speaking at the front, the priest, didn't really resonate for me. I'm a very visceral person. I'm a very physical body person. If I want to feel connected to source, I like to be in my body in some way. And the church doesn't provide that. So yoga was the catalyst for me to start to feel the coming home, the through the body and into the soul experience. That journey started at around age 19. I went into a teacher training at age 23, and then I've been teaching for over 22 years. So
Wow.
it has been like a step-by-step approach and just following the breadcrumbs along the way. But as soon as I landed in the arena of yoga, that's when everything started to make sense to me. And then I've just been slowly developing and curating that container and going into different limbs. And even though I don't present day teach regular yoga classes anymore, I've moved more into like a spiritual mentorship role. I still use the principles of the physical body when I'm working with people to be like, if you want to accelerate your growth and your expansion, it's important that you have a physical outlet, whether it is yoga or CrossFit or running, but something to cathartically release the stagnant energy so that you're making space for what wants to come in.
Yeah, I'm so glad you shared that. Me being from a sport and a fitness background, it's been a huge component to me. How we eat, how we move, how we sleep, just kind of general lifestyle principles that nurture us and nurture that growth as well. Because without movement, I would go nuts.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I would
And
struggle.
there's in the spiritual realm, there can be a disconnect from the body. We refer to this as spiritual bypassing, where you're just exiting the body and going into the dimensional realm. And it works. But the principle that I like to align with is my soul chose to come into this physical body. So therefore, this is not a hindrance, but actually an augmentation of where I want to go with connecting to consciousness. The physical body has a way of allowing me to connect to consciousness that I can't connect to when I'm in just a formless form in the dimensional realm. So rather than seeing this physical body as a hindrance, it's like your agency. And so like, how can you use the body to get deeper into that connection?
Wow. From your yoga journey, then, I'm curious through the principles. I mean, I've practiced yoga for many years, but I've never really studied the philosophies that behind it. But I think I've naturally just kind of become self-aware of my body. How important is it then to become self-aware? How much information do you feel the body is actually holding, and how much can we learn from that as we move forward?
Personally, I just play this like we call it the spanda energy. So that's the contraction and the expansion. When I tunnel in, so this is like the contraction form, when I'm like, okay, I'm gonna see what I can resource from myself by just experimenting and playing and spending time and meditating and doing the different things that I like to do. And when I get to a point with that experience where I feel like I'm stuck or like ruminating on the same thing over and over again and not really able to break through the next layer of the belief system, that's my internal cue that now I need to outsource and go external and find a teacher, a guide, a mentor, something that can be that has the capacity to see my blind spots and help me to move through it. So I use both hand in hand. And I find that sometimes we're more conditioned to outsourcing all the time. So we finish a training and we do another training. Then we finish a training, we do another training. We're not allowing the integration phase to take place, not just the integration, but taking the trainings, the teachings, the tools, letting it be in this cauldron inside of your body and letting this lovely soup come forward that's your own expression of what it is that you learned and assimilated, and then you're releasing back out. And then also sometimes I notice that, myself included, that we go internal so much that we forget that we're connected to this beautiful matrix that's available to us, and it's a resource of support. So we get so internally tunneled that we then become so independent that that is actually creating the block, is not letting the resources of support in to help create whatever it is that you're wanting to create.
That's very true. And I guess the next question is then, how do you let those resources in?
Well, it starts with the petition being put out into the universe. I'm looking for this. I'm wanting guidance with this. I'm asking for support with this. First things first, I let my spirit team come in and support me.
Mm-hmm.
Then I start to look at how possibly there's people around me that are actually here to support me, and I'm just skewing the perspective and not seeing the support as support. But once the petition is out into the universe, that's step one for me. Step two is then allowing am I creating the environment in my body, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to be able to receive the support as it comes in? So I'll give you an example. Several years ago, I was in a bit of a financial situation with my husband where we'd been living month to month for many years. COVID hit. Both of us instantly lost our jobs, and the money we were getting from the government wasn't paying the bills. So I decided to go to another town. I had one credit card left that I could use at a Costco, which is like a big warehouse shopping center in the North America. And on my way home, I was in a 22 car pileup. And
Wow.
when I'm like sandwiched and squished in this car and I have a neck injury, and all of my attention should have been on my concern for me getting to a hospital and making sure that I got the care that I needed, all that I could think about was, I've just totaled the only car we have because we had to sell my husband's. I can't afford the paramedic that's coming. And I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight because I don't have a visa to put on for a hotel because I was about 2 hours away from home. And in that moment, I got so angry with the situation that I was in that I just swore that I would never be in this financial position again. Fast forward a few months later, I was putting the resource out there. Like, I know that I'm in the vocation that I'm meant to be in. And how can I be in this vocation and also be able to support my family the way that I want to be supporting my family? And the way that that teacher came in was a connection of dots that I couldn't have imagined if I tried to make it up and make my own movie on it. It was me listening to a webinar with someone that I admire. She brought on a guest speaker. This guest speaker said something that hit me. I reached out to her, and it was just a series of events that I ended up in this training session with her. And the point that I'm trying to make in this long-winded story is that putting the petition out there, I don't want to be in this position ever again. Show me how to not be in this position. But then to not then be open to receive how the support wants to come in. This is a big point for a lot of people. They're like, I'm praying, I'm doing it, I'm asking, I'm trying to connect to my guides and teachers. And they're so focused on the doing that we forget that there's an exhale that happens, and we relax into the receivership of what's coming in. And that's the point where I was able to be like, oh, I see I'm supposed to align with that person. I don't know how. She costs a heck of a lot of money. I have no idea how I'm going to work with this woman, but here's my breadcrumbs, and I'm following and just seeing how it unfolds.
Yeah, love it. That makes sense. So my question to you is then, God, is that when you had to have that moment, do you think that you were in that moment because you hadn't been listening to already what is trying to attract your attention from your larger group?
Yeah,
Or do you feel the other way around, that it happened, that then it just happened to turn inward, and then you're now more on your purpose? Because I guess the question I always kind of ponder on, not that it really matters, is that, is it laid out for me? Is my divine purpose laid out through my life, or am I kind of semi working with, because obviously we have free will as well at the same time. So not that I dwell on it too much, but just listening to you share that, then it got me thinking.
Well, I think the free will comes into in like, we have choice in every moment. So I could have several months later had the same scenario line up, and when I saw this teacher interviewing this individual, oh great, not for me, I can't afford it. Like, the excuse comes in as to why not to do it, and that is my free will to choose not to do that. How I sort of view it from the field of the Akasha when I work with it and people ask me future questions, the future is not written in stone. It has so many different energies working with it simultaneously, but there are certain potential energies that are stronger than others. So for example, is the trajectory that I went on one that was already laid out, or was all the energy coming in at that moment that it was right for me to choose to step into that? I don't personally like to think that things are predestined because I don't like to be told what to do. So I like to always feel like I have sovereignty, that I have the ability to choose and not choose. And this is one of the conditions that we get when we come to Earth. So that's just my own personal viewpoint on it. And it's what I get shown when I'm working in the energetic realm. But I know that there's lots of philosophies out there that would contradict that, and that's okay too.
No, it's beautiful. I like, because on my own journey, when I look back, there's been defining moments, and I hear the saying, "It's from the universe. It's like a tickle of a feather.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's a bit of wood, and then it's a Mack truck if you're not listening. To like take it on." And they got to a point where I had the Mack truck many years ago to go. And looking back, I can kind of see patterns along the way in my heart. I knew I should have been pivoting earlier. Like, I'd learned what I needed to learn from that growth aspect and move on, but I kind of held on to,
So there's
because
another
of the fear
point
of
here
change.
that I
Yeah.
just want to bring. I just want to highlight. Like, you shared off camera that you had had a Kundalini awakening.
Mm-hmm.
That's a tremendous amount of energy that comes in and creates this upgrade from a cellular level all the way through. Now, if your whole system wasn't ready to have that experience, you could have broken down rather than broken through.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, there's other cues in your history that are showing you like, oh, you could have saved yourself a lot of grief and done this 3 years earlier. True. But was your system ready to handle the upgrade at that time? Like if
Yeah,
we
yeah.
consider the fact that perhaps this isn't our only lifetime that we've had with this soul, all of the lifetimes have been building up to lead to the moments that you're having in this lifetime. And those extra 3 years of growth, expansion, wisdom, practice, whatever it was that you did, is just sort of the last stitch in the quilt that needed to come in so that when that Kundalini experience happened for you, your system was able to like upgrade rather than break apart. You don't want to stick the plug in the wall and have the fuse break. You want the lights to go on when that happens, right? And some souls, like your soul, probably needs that big of a something to happen to get your attention. And the other soul just needs the feather on the cheek, to use your example. And then the person's like, oh, what's over in this corner? I'm going to go explore it. And different souls are different. Some people need big risks, big experiences, galvanic, kind of cathartic things. And other people just kind of tiptoe along, and they're almost like a pixie fairy when they're going through their soul's advancement. It's just very light, very free, very like, oh, and look where we just arrived. And it's very natural.
Mm. Yeah, no, makes sense, complete sense. So on your journey then, after you had that point of pain and getting so angry and using it as a fuel to shift direction, I'm assuming that's when you started leaning into the Akashic Records and learning those aspects. How did that work come about for you then from that point? And having the courage to go there, because I know you said your mentor would cost a lot of money, but I don't even know how that's going to work and everything. Because I see it all the time with
Yeah.
people are like, I'm so ready to quit my job. I'm so ready to lean into, I want to help people more, especially once they start having um, freeing up themselves, you know?
So just repeat the question for me. I kind of got lost in your languaging.
So there was probably way too many in there, but the fact that you started leaning into learning or working with the Akashic Records, but you
Correct.
also started to have the courage to lean in when financially you weren't probably ready for it, and started to make the decisions to go in that direction with having a mentor. I mean, they're all big decisions, really,
Yeah.
in our life.
Okay. So they came in at different times. So when COVID hit and the studio shut down, that gave me lots of opportunity to just have more meditation time. So, and my husband was home at the same time, so he's watching the 3 kids. And in my meditation, 3 nights in a row, just someone's name just kind of came to mind. And by the third night, I was like, okay, well, this is happening 3 times in a row. I'm going to just reach out and email this individual. So, this is someone that I grew up with. We were family friends, but we weren't really close. She was about 5 years older than me. And I'd run into her in the summertime the previous year and said hello to her, but I hadn't connected with her since. So I reached out and sent an email and I said, look, your name has come up 3 times in meditation. I have no idea what this means, but I sense that you do, and I'll let you take it from there. So she emailed back and she was like, so glad that you reached out. This is actually how I advertise, is through the ethers. And I do Akashic record trainings and readings. Would you like to have one? So I'd started off with a reading. It was very clear in the reading that I was subconsciously already working with the Akashic records. So I quickly went through the trainings. Now, to just give you like a comparison, when I did my 200 hour in yoga and then my 500 hour in yoga, there's about 10 years in between those two, because I really like to massage and play with things for a long time. Not always 10 years, But the Akashic trainings, level 1, 2, and 3, I did them all within 6 months. Like that was how quickly I was moving through them. So I was working with the records. And then when I had that introduction to the teacher to work with, so I have always worked in the vocation that resonated with me. I've been very blessed in not ever feeling like I don't know who I am and what I'm meant to do in life. But where I've fallen short is that I've done what I love for 16 to 20 years and never been able to actually make any money doing what I'm doing. So that's where I was getting angry and frustrated. I knew that there's so much wealth within me, but for some reason it wasn't expressing on a physical level. And then even to take this a step further, I have a high level of integrity. So there's a part of me that felt like a fake or an imposter, because I'm like, how can I have so much connection to energy, but I can't actually bring in financial abundance to myself? It felt like a strong disconnect and it didn't sit well with me. When I made the decision to work with this teacher, what I said to her was, I'm a yes, but I have no idea how I'm going to get this money. And so what she did with me is we did, and I still use this to this day with a lot of clients. We went into a meditation where we meditated on the future version of myself that had already finished the training and was experiencing a life of abundance and comfort, and asked her what she did at this point in time to get started. And what came to me was to reach out to a friend of mine that was a bookkeeper. Now, it made no sense to me at all in the moment, but I said, well, that's my next step. I guess I'll do that. So I reached out to this bookkeeper. I'm like, I need to, it was $40,000 and I had $500 in my bank account, just to give you a reference here.
Wow.
So
Okay.
I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how I can get the money. And she was like, oh, I bet you I can find a place that can give you a business loan that's not going to ask you too many questions. Anyway, she just hooked me up to this sweet site. Within 2 days, I got the approval. And then it came back on me of like, okay, we've knocked out all your obstacles. Are you actually going to say yes now and do this thing? And when I said yes, there was so much transformation that happened. It wasn't actually, the course was phenomenal. But the biggest transformation came in the willingness to take that big of a risk on me, not anyone else, on me, and see what happens. So I was sobbing and crying and wondering if I should do this or not do this, and feeling like I just didn't even want to be in my body. And my husband's like, if anyone can do this, you can do it. And that's where he's great. He's such a good champion. But he's also someone that doesn't look at the finances, and he's like, whatever, you go for it. And it was a wonderful experience. But the point is that these transitions came through in different ways. Ask me to meditate on myself and ask if I'm a yes or a no, that's fine for me. But to physically put my money where my mouth is, that's harder for me to do. So those experiences of joining the Akashic Records was just an easy transition. And then the actual physical transition of cleaning up my money story, that was not as easy to do. Probably one of the hardest things I've done.
I don't doubt it. I had the same issues growing up in the valleys of Wales, in the relationship with money. I've had to change myself. First of all, thank you for your honesty. I had goosebumps when you shared that then, because I can relate in so many levels. And I just want to pluck out the word willingness, because I remember interviewing Robbie Holtz, who wrote a book called The Secret of Aboriginal Healing, and where her partner was came here to Australia and was the first Western man to be taken into the Aboriginals in 40 odd years.
Wow.
Incredible book, incredible story. And I always mention it when I can, but the very first thing they said, if we're going to work with you and the healing is to know that you are 100%, like willingness was the word. So willingness was the first step. And if the willingness wasn't there, or they felt any kind of resistance, they wouldn't proceed in anything.
Yeah.
So when I heard you say willingness then, and the fact it's like you kind of know when you're all in.
Yeah.
When you've finally taken the step, okay, I'm not turning back now. I'm actually in.
Yeah.
There's magic in that.
Yeah.
The intention and the power behind that is so powerful.
And the thing that was interesting for me to watch and observe myself was while I was in that course, I remember having a breakdown about halfway through where I was like, I'm sitting here watching the abundance happen to everyone around me, but not yet to me. And this was like my break point, because I was like, I was doing, the action work and the visualizing work and the mindset work. I mean, I was using all the tools. And what I was seeing was my husband was having the best summer season of his life. The women in the training were all getting sales and doing all the things. Like everyone around me was receiving from the ripple effect of what I was doing, but it wasn't me. And there's just this selfish moment of like, it's my turn. When is it going to be my turn? And it was a couple weeks later that it clicked and something happened for me. And then I was like, holy shit, here we go. And then it wasn't like a snowball. It was just one of those very slow moving, continuous momentum building. But then once it gets to a certain point, then it just starts doubling with ease, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to tie that up, because I want to lean into Akashic Records in a minute. If you had to distill it down, and I know obviously you spent years working on it, but for listeners, something to ponder on around that, if you had to give like footnotes to say what are the best actions you could take to overcome your money stories, or what helped you, what would it be?
First, just creating the awareness around it, acknowledging it, creating the awareness, like, let's just let everything in. So I started with what's the story I was taught growing up? Who are the people that I think of when I want to believe the story that money's corrupt? Whether it's celebrities or personal family members, how do they behave and act to prove this belief system that I have? Then I leaned into, is there another side to the story? Right? Is there another way that I can see that this is actually used for good? Mother Teresa brought in millions of dollars every year, millions of dollars. It's not talked about how much money Mother Teresa actually had pass through her hands and give to people who were in need. Now, this is a woman that saw money as a form of love, not as a form of greed and corruption. So I started to follow stories like this of how money is actually a form of love. And from there, then it's a choice point. Like, do I want to change this, or do I want to keep buying into this old paradigm version of myself? And then once I started moving into the choice of wanting to heal and clean this up, for me, it was having conversations about it. It was being able to have conversations with potential clients. That was probably the biggest healing for me, was rather than putting my prices on my website and just hoping that people come in and pay them, can I make myself available to hold the space for someone who wants to work with me, but is really hung up on the price? And having a money conversation with someone else where we are both healing together in that moment. I still love these conversations. I call them clarity calls. And anytime someone comes in, it's an amazing experience for me and them. And then also just working with the value, not so much like, am I worth a certain amount of money, but do I feel worthy to be able to receive it? Because it's one thing to bring it in, and then it's something completely different when you're just throwing it back out instantly, when you can't actually receive it, and it's not holding it or harboring it. I do believe that money's an energy and it needs to flow through us. So being willing to pull it in, but also being able to redirect it out, but doing it with the frequency of love, as opposed to being scared of it or not comfortable with it or feeling gross by it. And so you're just kind of like, here, you take my money, or you take my money, or you take my money. It's interesting. Those are some good points to start with. Yeah.
Yeah, no, beautiful, absolutely, and the bit with the dialogue with somebody else as well, I think is extremely powerful, and exploring those opportunities, because yeah, we see it all the time, and I think as well, especially when we're leaning into the work that we do in supporting others, and I hear Anita Mojani speak about this quite often, is that for some reason she says light workers, but when you're in this industry, there's such a hang up in actually charging around it, which is ridiculous. I remember watching a clip of Steve Irwin. I don't know if you remember Steve Irwin here in Australia, the famous guy, and he was being interviewed by a reporter, and you could tell the reporter was trying to get at him because he made a lot of money, and he caught him up on it, and he just said, I will take as much money off as many people as I possibly can and be as wealthy as I possibly can. He said, because you know why? Because I know exactly what to do with that money and ensure that I'm putting it back to nurture the wildlife, to nurture planet Earth and actually do good in the world. And without it, I can't do that and serve my purpose. And it was so powerful when I listened to that. I was like, wow, man, you're spot on,
Yeah, and
you
you just
know?
gave me goosebumps now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
So, Akashic Records, what drew you to the Akashic Records and what are they? Just so we can get clear on them.
So the Akashic Records, Akasha is a Sanskrit word. It means space or spirit. So if you're coming at this from a scientific mindset, Akasha would be the quantum field. Quantum field is the study of everything. Akasha is the study of space. Space is everywhere, it's everything, right? So quantum field. If you're more spiritually based, you can think of it as consciousness. But Akasha is the overarching umbrella of space. And then within that, everyone has what we call an Akashic record. So think of it like your energetic blueprint. And when you decode the blueprint, your Akashic Records contains all the information of your soul's timeline. So from the time that it chose to separate or lengthen away from oneness and come into some sort of a form, whether it's on Earth or another planet, and then all the different lifetimes that it's had, and then it also contains the energy of the future projections of yourself. So that's what your Akashic Record is. Now, people have Akashic records, animals have Akashic records, um, plants will have an Akashic record, your business has an Akashic record. So it's not just something that is alive, it's anything that holds consciousness and has the potential to serve, right? So your business is its own record because this is just a different way to think about business. Thousands of people every day are like, oh my gosh, I wish I could have someone help me with this. And this petition is going out into the universe all the time. We need help with this. And I wish someone could show me that. And why isn't there a thing that does this for me? And the conscious field takes all that information. And then it's like, well, who would be the best deliverer of this answer to prayer for these people? Oh, look, Guy, he'd be phenomenal. So when you get the hit of, I got to leave my job and do this thing, yes, it's your idea, but where does your idea come from? Your idea comes from the bigger field knocking on you and saying, hey, could you fill this hole? We got some people that are really needing access to what you have to offer. And so your business has an Akashic record. It has ways that it wants to create through you. It has ways that it wants to guide you and support you. So you can open up the Akashic record of your business and get information on how to be more in harmony, how to attune with it. Sometimes, for example, myself, I really thought that my business was meant to go kind of corporate and move into a corporate arena. But every time I would check with my business was like, no, that's not like, yes, we're meant to work with a system, but it's not a corporate system. I kept playing with it and every time I tried to work it from that angle, although it felt common sense to me, it just wasn't easeful with my business until finally I was like, okay, clearly my business does not want to create a corporate offering through me. That's someone else's stuff that they're meant to do. It's not what I'm meant to do. So by tuning to my business and playing with it, it just saves me a lot of traveling down paths that could be potentially dead ends, right?
Yeah, I can relate to that one.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
So we would want to learn this or experience it or see somebody like yourself to have your Akashic reads. I'm thinking because if we have current challenges that seem to perpetuate all the time, and maybe we're not seeing a different perspective of why that is or how to move past it. would that support it, the Akashic Records, by doing that?
Yeah, so there's lots of things that you can do when you go in. One, you can just go in and get information and just receive information about yourself or about your business if you're playing with it that way. This is called an Akashic reading or an Akashic session. I call them sessions because readings sometimes get mixed up with astrology or something like that. So I just call it a session. And in that time that someone comes in and they can book with me, or I have also affiliates that work with me. So people that will blend the Akashic Records with their area of expertise. This is also really cool. You can take Akashic Records and you can blend it with astrology. You can blend it with human design. You can blend it with Reiki, massage, whatever your field of expertise is. Think of it like a frankincense oil. When you pair frankincense oil with any other essential oil, it augments it and makes it even more powerful. So that's kind of what the Akashic Records does. So in a reading, we can get information. We can see if there's any contracts that you have with other people that might not be serving your highest and greatest good. And we can clear them on an etheric level so that your communication is better in this human form. Or maybe the relationship itself can completely disconnect if you want it to. We can look at belief systems and see if there's belief systems that are showing up that are that served you maybe in another lifetime or previously in this lifetime that are no longer serving you. And so this field that we work with, it's very fast, it's very quick. And we as humans are accelerating and expanding at a rate that is faster than ever before in human history. So what's really fun about the Akashic Records is because it clears so quickly on the etheric level, so long as you're supporting it with actions in the physical level, people really enjoy this modality because it works at the pace at which we're operating at right now. For a lot of people, talk therapy, it's a beautiful form of healing energy. But what I hear most commonly is it takes so long. It takes so long, this talk therapy. And it's because the frequency of language is slower than the frequency of energy that's more in a formless form. So that's one reason why people would want to do a session. And then the Akashic training is showing people how they can work with the Akashic Records, whether it's to support themselves or to do readings on other people or just to support other people that they're working with, right? So how I play with that is we identify what your clair abilities are. And then by knowing what your clair abilities are, then I know how to coach you when you're trying to read the records. So if you are clairvoyant and I'm asking you, hey guy, like, what are you feeling when you're going into the records? What does it feel like? You're like, I don't feel anything. I'm not feeling anything. And then you think you're not getting it because you're not feeling anything. But if I know that you're clairvoyant, I'm going to say, okay, what colors are you seeing? What type of pictures are coming across your mind screen? Is it a flash or is it something that's kind of being painted on the landscape? And then from there, you're going to start to get, oh, okay, this is how I read it. And for most people, the catch between being able to read the records with ease or needing a little bit more guidance and support with it, it really comes down to, can you trust that it's more than your imagination what you're receiving?
You literally answered my question because I'm like, how most people, because even when we run our workshops, we the first place we get people to is connect back to their heart and actually start to get them out of their minds. And I find as a society, we are so disconnected from our intuitive side of ourselves. Even when we get in the hits, we got no idea. And
Yeah.
and to actually trust that and go in beyond logic and move forward in life from that as your driving force can be very challenging too. Do you find when you're teaching or training, do you do training as well?
Yeah, I do. So I offer the Akashic Record training twice a year. So
Ah,
next one will be in the fall of 2023. Yeah.
yeah, wow. So then, do you find that the greatest challenge is discerning between what is my brain, my thought, what's going on, to then what is actually coming through and guiding me?
Oftentimes what's actually coming through is actually coming through, but they think it's their imagination, so they dismiss it. So it's working. The best way that I can describe it is I allow myself to be the confidence for the person when they start. So here's how I work, Guy. If someone comes to me and says, I'm interested, I get this all the time. I'm interested in the training, but I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do it. What my reply to that is, I put out a petition. This is also how I advertise. So I spend time in my meditations during the week asking for those individuals that are meant to work with me to come into my field some way, shape, or form. And I'll ask that the guides and teachers of those individuals help to clear the crown chakra and clear the systems of the body, so that exactly what you said, so that they can actually hear the ping to perhaps listen to the podcast with Guy and myself. And from that, check my website out. And then next thing you know, they're booking a call with me, right? So by the time someone gets to the point where they're reaching out, that's all the information that I need to know that this person is meant to work with me, because I've done so much behind the scenes to help to bring that person closer. So I know 100% when someone reaches out to me that that I can be the support to help them to be able to read the records. Then from there, the choice is theirs if they want to join on or not join on. If they do join on and we start, what I say is, let me be your confidence to start. I know that you can read the records, or else you wouldn't be here. And as the training goes on, the grip starts to loosen between me being their confidence and them being able to be their own holders of their own confidence. And that's just what happens in the 3 months that we hang out together.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
And if someone's just to have a reading, how long does a reading normally last?
Mine are an hour, but some of the practitioners I work with are an hour and a half. You know, I'm just not the type of teacher that tries to create the dependency on the teacher. So you can do a reading once a year or once every 6 months, but I don't usually have people that, I don't think I ever have people that come every week for an Akashic reading. There's a lot of information that comes in, it's recorded. And then I usually say, you know what, go away and listen to this a few times and just pick something from it that you want to work on for the next little bit. And then when you feel like you've kind of thoroughly combed through the whole reading and that you need some more assistance, then come back and book another session. But it's not designed to be something that people need to have over and over and over again.
Yeah. And just to put a bow in this at the end, and something that you said, I just want to highlight that we can obviously learn this to then use it to guide us on ourselves.
Yes.
Moving forward.
Yeah. So this is sort of one of my big missions in life, is to break down the dogmatic stereotypes that are still out there, that we need someone else to be our resource to consciousness, that there's certain things that people are born with that give them the ability to access consciousness, and some people are born with it and some people aren't. And what I just love to say to people is we are living at a time in human history where this information and this ability to connect is available to anyone who wants to learn it. In previous generations, it wasn't available in that way because we were so focused on getting our shelter, our food, and making sure that we were protected, that we outsourced it to leaders in our tribes and our communities to be our spiritual teachers, because we didn't have time for both. And so that outsourcing back then was necessary. It's not necessary anymore, but the cellular programming is still there for people, making them believe that they can't access it themselves and they need to outsource it to someone else. So part of my mission is to be like, that's bullshit, pardon my language, and let me show you that it's possible.
Yeah, love it. I've like I said, this is the first time I've really explored it today, having you on the podcast. You've definitely got me curious and leaning into it. But I couldn't agree more. People are more hungry than ever. I mean, we get up to nearly 100 people now on our one-day workshops that come in.
Wow.
When we run them. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And we do that twice on a weekend.
Wow.
So we'll within 90 minutes of each other. Yeah.
So your soul, let me just highlight this a little bit. Your soul is designed to work with people on the masses. That is how you're designed to work with people. And so someone like me that's designed to work one-on-one or in small containers, I'm like, how do you bring in 100 people twice a day or twice a weekend? That to me is incredible. But my soul isn't designed to work with people in that mass way. And I'm more influential when I'm working one-on-one. So to your listeners that have a money story, this was a big breakthrough for me. Was I had a belief system that the only way to make money was to have masses of people coming my way.
Huh.
And my teacher was like, let me just clear this up for you. There are people out there that are willing to pay a higher price to have an intimate container with someone. And those are the people that you're meant to work with. And that was my light bulb moment where I was like, oh, I don't have to become, Oprah Winfrey or whoever the hell in order to make money. I can still be me, and this is possible. So I love that this came up at the very end. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, and I couldn't agree more that there is no right way. I'm only doing what lights me up.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Yeah.
There's no other way to it. And I just keep exploring. And I've always wanted to work with people. I remember, 20 years ago thinking I had this urge to be helping groups of people. It was so bizarre, but I can even recall it back then. I just didn't have any belief systems to support that was possible
Yeah.
at that point in time. So all I've done is just lean into what's naturally innate within me, and it just keeps unfolding more and more and more.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah,
Keep
yeah.
going.
Thank you. Yeah, it's 1,000%. Yeah, it's like a snowball; it just keeps going.
Yeah.
So, question for you, Heather, just before we wrap it up. I'll make sure there's links in the show
Sure.
notes for everyone. What's the best URLs? Just say it out loud as well for people if they want to find out more.
Yeah. So, best way to just learn a little bit more about me with no strings attached, if you go to my website, which is heatherivany.com. So HeatherIvany.com. On my homepage there, I have something called the Spiritual Reset, which is a 7-day journey that you can go on, which just helps you to move away from the periphery and in towards the midline. And it's a great way to get to know me. I have some free yoga nidras on there and meditations on there for you to play with. And then if you're more of a social media person, the really only social media that I have a little bit of a presence on is Instagram. And so it's just Heather_Ivany.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Last question for you, Heather, before we wrap it up. With everything we've covered today, what would you love to leave the listeners to ponder on?
Let your imagination just riff. Like, allow yourself to just dream big and don't get caught up in the how. But as soon as you stop dreaming, that's when the becoming part of yourself can't access you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Heather, thank you so much for coming on. I really enjoyed our conversation today.
Likewise, I did too. It was neat how you sort of guided and led the journey that we went on. I enjoyed it as well, Guy. I appreciate it.